something that I don't think qualifies as a hot take per se. Let's call it a theory, and that's that the most effective podcasts right now don't feel like podcasts at all. There's no whiz-bang theme music or sound signature or hook them in the first 5 seconds with a cliffhanger intro. They're more like a voicemail that I actually look forward to, or more of a first draft of a podcast episode than what most of the capital P podcasters are putting out into the world right now. They feel effortless, and I suspect and have heard, we'll see if this is true of me, they actually are kind of effortless. And here's a bit of a mea culpa from me. I think I've accidentally scared some people away from podcasting. Not intentionally, are you kidding me? If you've got a podcast dream and an idea in search of an audience, let's do this. But I spend a fair amount of time, okay, maybe a lot of time, telling people that podcasting is much more involved than people realize. You need strategy, positioning, editing, systems, promotion of the thing, and the whole, how do I make this sustainable without losing my mind? And will anyone listen to it? And I stand by all of that, but also between my insistence on being a podcasting truther and the ubiquity of Diary of a CEO level slick production, I think people have gotten the impression that in order to be valuable, a podcast needs to be this big, elaborate, full-fledged media operation. The perfect lighting, the mathematically timed editing, the beautifully curated bookshelf backdrop, the video quality that would make any film school grad salivate, and so on. And that's not it. Sometimes the most effective podcasts are basically a collection of really spot-on voice notes. Short, to the point, valuable, honest, and very, very human. Definitely not polished and definitely not long just for the sake of taking up people's time with the sound of your voice or the look of your face. While manosphere podcasters are pushing podcast runtimes to new heights, no pun intended, I don't think Mr. Taylor Swift would be welcomed into the manosphere with open arms anyway. And the color daddies of the world are setting new standards for the podcast aesthetic, or at least the comfiness of the chairs on this set. Where can I get some of those? To say nothing of the sheer tidal wave of promotional video clips that accompany every Call Her Daddy episode. Oh my God, that's a lot. Some of the most effective podcast strategies right now, especially for those in the business of service providing, are leaning hard into what I'd call micro content in the form of voice note style podcasts, aka, hey, the kind you're listening to right now. They're skipping the fancy production and the video format entirely, and the result is that the focus is on the information and the point of view being shared rather than the bells and whistles around it. Effective. But before I forget, this is Talking the Talk, a podcast about podcasting. I am your host, Courtney Reimer, and I have long revered audio podcasts, as you've probably heard, both as a consumer of them and a creator of them and longtime supporter and producer of creators of them. But now that I'm really in the trenches as a podcast host, and one with ADHD for that matter, it sure is nice to be able to take a glance at my notes without making it weird on video or having to think about whether or not it's weird on video. Those of you who have yet to start a podcast, remember this when you're tempted to go whole hog on a video setup. There's a lot more to think about when you have to think about what's on your face or what's in your teeth. Back to the micro content voice notes approach to podcasting. The absolute apotheosis of what a successful voice note podcast can be is Build With Becky. It's hosted by Becky Pierson Davidson, founder of the membership community strategy business Affinity Collective. It's composed entirely of voice note style episodes that are founded on her invaluable advice on how to build communities that last. I'm pretty sure the idea came out of a voice note habit she had with one of her mastermind group chats. Even if it didn't, it's definitely the vibe. If you've heard a few of my episodes, you've also probably heard me talk about Becky, albeit not by name. She is the podcaster business owner that I hired for a consultation for my community that I'm building for podcasters. More to come on that. I had gotten to know her and built trust in her and knew she knew her shit based on what she says, 9-minute episode at a time. I've been working in podcasting since before that was even a word, and before egads, some of you were probably even born. I'm not lying when I say that Becky has truly opened my eyes to a whole new, tremendously powerful approach to podcasting, both in terms of how it respects the creator's bandwidth and energy, as well as what it imparts to the person listening to it. If you're contemplating a podcast but have been thrown off by the seemingly insurmountable work it would take to have a podcast, this is some great news for you. Build with Becky is comprised solely of those barest bones episodes that are literally like a voice note from your smartest best friend who has the gift of gab, tremendous knowledge on a niche topic you happen to be very interested in, and a willingness to let Becky, I love you, but a few little background noises slip through the editing or lack thereof. I nearly fell on the floor when Becky told me that she actually did record an episode after a day at, I believe it was Craft and Commerce. I will be there in June in Boise. If you're there, look me up, say hi. But anyway, I could not believe it when Becky told me she came back to her hotel room after a day's worth of invigorating panels and drinking from the fire hose of information imparted at Craft and Commerce, and just recorded essentially what was a voice note she would have sent to her friends about all of the things she learned that day. And voila, there was the episode. I think she basically released it the very next day. Oh my God, like that's the dream. No fuss, no muss, just get that content out there, babe. So no music, no slick production, just straight to the point. Excellent advice, straight to the people who need to hear it, who eventually might become her clients. Yes, she's told me it has become her number one sales tool, and it's done that in less than a year since its launch. And I'm proof of that because I am among the customers who have bought from her based on the trust that we've built in her via her voice note length podcast. So this idea that podcasts only count if they look and sound like Good Hang or the new Netflix podcast allegedly, that OMG, I'm not gonna lie, is absolutely gorgeous. What is it called when you paint the wall all one color and the trim and everything, that deep, rich green? Love that. But it's not going to happen for my podcast set, aka the attic that is my office. Listen, and I know video podcasts are bringing a whole new audience into podcasting, and for that reason, I applaud it. But it's also making a lot of us freeze when we should just go for it. I mean, heck, like I said, I've been in this business for decades, and it wasn't until this year that I finally went for it myself and sat down here in front of this mic and started my own. What's the equivalent of podcast writer's block? I could not get over it until I just did. I know the bar feels pretty high when you're scrolling through your Instagram reels or TikToks that are pulled from those slick looking video podcasts. Those so-called requirements can feel really overwhelming. I call them so-called requirements because they are really not requirements. At best, they're highly generalized best practices. At worst, they're roadblocks to creativity and output from people who really could benefit from hearing what you have to say, to people like you who might not yet have a podcast, but probably have a lot of valuable wisdom to share with the world, from it getting out there to the people who need to hear it. I'm not saying I don't love a well-produced show, because boy, do I ever. I worked in that world, and I could go on for hours about the sound design of the OGest of OG podcasts, Radio Lab. But just like published writing comes in all shapes and sizes, as in no one expects your email sent via Kit to resemble the lost works of Leo Tolstoy. At least I hope not, since I just launched my email on Kit. Plug, hey, sign up for my newsletter, which is very much a work in progress, in my show notes. But truly, podcasting isn't just something the big media players do anymore, obviously. It's simultaneously so much more than that. And when it comes to production possibilities and creation possibilities, it's so much less than that. Yes, it's entertainment. And yes, even these thought leadership podcasts can be entertainment. But podcasting is more than anything a relationship medium between you, the podcast host, me, the podcast host, and you, the person listening, and the people that you talk to when you're not on a solo episode like this. And it's a rough around the edges love note to your people. And I'm guessing your best relationships with your people don't involve these fancy, high-end, perfectly designed questions and answers. In fact, I'm guessing the lack of polish is what has contributed to your strongest relationships being your strongest relationships. It's the quirks that make the quality. Hey, I should trademark that. The same is true of the best podcasts. They have what an audio editing connoisseur like me might instinctively refer to as errors, when really they're just personality revealing elements. The errors are what build intimacy, and God help me if I forget this when I go to edit this episode within an inch of its life, as I so often do. It's these off-the-cuff vibes that are especially effective in these voice note style episodes, that they're to the point. They respect people's time. They tend to focus on a single idea, if it's not me, that is, or a single insight or a point of view. hot take, an alternate way of looking at the world. Like the best voice notes, short audio-only episodes center the experience of the person on the receiving end of the message. In short, they're designed for the listener. Okay, this is probably where the analogy falls apart a bit, but who among us hasn't received a 14-minute audio message from her bestie about that bestie's latest drama? No shade, besties, no shade. Transcripts exist for a reason. But unlike your bestie's meandering or mine, a good voice note podcast episode still has some structure, or at least a unifying theme or point that brings something of value to its audience. And that value can come in the form of a new idea, an alternate approach to something that's been a sticking point for your audience, a lesson that you've had that helps the listener feel seen or enriched by the wisdom you, the voice note creator, has gleaned. These little micro episodes can be jam-packed with good stuff, and they don't require high-end video equipment or even your hair to be combed, thank God. There's a time and a place for everything, and I think this sweet spot we should all probably be aiming for is where we take the audience seriously, but not ourselves so seriously that we never even manage to get to the microphone and hit record, let alone publish. I truly think more people would have podcasts right now, people who really want to have them and probably should, if they realize this whole thing could be allowed to feel a little bit lighter. So consider this your permission slip to make an episode that doesn't feel particularly podcasty in the way that it's formatted. In fact, this is actually a requirement or a very firmly suggested homework assignment for my clients and Podcast Launch Accelerator members. I ask them to record a voice note for me in which they describe their podcast promise to me, and voila, they have an early draft of their podcast trailer without even realizing they're making it. And that's a big thing I want to leave you with here, because yes, keep it simple, but also make sure it's doing its job, it being any podcast episode, really. So yeah, there are a few non-negotiables that apply to podcasting generally that shouldn't be ignored in these Gab style voice note episodes. If you want a podcast to actually work, and I don't mean like go viral and earn you a bajillion downloads, which I've seen crazier things happen, but that's not the point I'm making here. Actually work, as in connect and resonate with your ideal audience, help them build trust in you, and make them come back for more. And maybe, as was the case with me and Becky of Build With Becky, buy what you're selling or hire you to help them in a way that you uniquely can. Here's non-negotiable number one. You need to know who the show is for. And I don't mean people who like podcasts, a very specific person with a specific set of quandaries, pain points, problems, curiosities, desires, aspirations. The best podcasts feel like they're talking to a very specific someone, not just shouting into the void and hoping that everyone loves it. Second non-negotiable, you need a point of view. I know you have one, but you need to be clear on your point of view, how it differs from other points of view that are out there, and most importantly, how your point of view could be of service to the people you want to listen to your podcast. So it's why you, why this show, why this perspective. What do you see or notice or articulate differently? What wisdom have you acquired? What knowledge do you have to impart? What frameworks, formulas, you name it, that set you apart from other people in your space or category? You need to be very clear on who you are showing up for, why you are showing up for them, and why they should show up for you. Third non-negotiable, you need actual humanness or humanity, whatever the word is. It's a thing I like to edit out of my episodes. It's a lifelong battle with perfectionism. I'm working on it, but people are really tired of feeling less than the people that they are mostly watching on podcasts. Yes, they want something to aspire to and look up to and feel like they can respect and honor the wisdom of the person who is hosting the podcast, but I think they also want to feel camaraderie, and like they used to say about the president we wanted to elect, you could have a beer with him, like they're your smarter best friend, smarter than you, but still accessible and someone you could hang with. Hey, hence the name Good Hang, right? That's probably why it's doing so well. Or maybe it's because Amy Poehler is very skilled, but they want to feel like there's a real person on the other end, a person with personality, stray thought, maybe a dog barking in the background. Mine hasn't yet, but again, I used to call that stuff errors. I'm sure there's even an audio term that I'm forgetting. That stuff that mucks up the audio quality is actually what makes the quality of the content nowadays. So the fourth non-negotiable, you need to respect your audience's time. It doesn't necessarily mean be short. It just means have a point, have them centered in the point that you're making, and know what you're trying to give to your audience with this episode. So the best podcasts, whether or not they're 90 minutes or 9 minutes, they make people feel like their time was well spent. I say it all the time. It's our most precious, non-renewable resource. How we choose to spend it is important, and we don't want to feel like we wasted it on a podcast that didn't know where it was going or who it was for. And my final, and I keep belaboring these various acronyms, but the final non-negotiable, you need to tell people what they should do with all this time they just spent with you. What's the action you want them to take? Because they're hanging on your every word and they're like, okay, now what? What can I do with this? If your podcast is part of a broader business or community or creative project or mission, you are allowed and actually very much welcome and almost, I would say, required to invite them further into your world, invite them into new ways of connecting with you or working with you. It's not gross, it's good communication. A podcast can absolutely be generous and strategic at the same time. So, in summary, what's on this list is as important as what's not on this list. And that is, you don't need to. People ask me all the time, what's the microphone I should get? What's the headphone I should get? And I used to say any microphone is better than no microphone. Any headphones are better than no headphones. And that's still true to an extent. I've had some breakdown on me. But you don't gotta buy the high-end thing. You don't gotta rent out a brand new studio just to get an audience. Like, that can come later. Hey, I love a beautiful studio. I've said that a lot. But first, you just got to start. And to paraphrase Handmaid's Tale, don't let the you must post every week bastards drag you down. I have not posted every week, but I keep coming back and I keep finding new things to say, and I hope you keep getting things out of them. The point is, you want someone to finish an episode feeling more connected to you and more enriched, more, I don't know, enlightened, is that too big of a word, than they did when they hit play. So if you've made it this far, thank you. I'm grateful for your time. And if you're thinking, okay, maybe I need to stop overthinking it too and just go for it with my podcast, yes, you do. And I'm here to help. And so is a small group of equally intelligent and motivated and slightly confused, but looking for a map, entrepreneurial, hopeful podcasters in the form of my next podcast launch accelerator cohort. Applications are open. It starts very soon. It depends on when you're listening to this. It may have already started. I will have a wait list for the next one, probably. Life is short and unpredictable, but in any event, it is a small, hands-on program that takes you from idea to live podcast in just 5 weeks. We cover that stuff that I said before: strategy, positioning, format, sustainability, growth, all the stuff that people, including me, spiral about at 11:30 p.m. when they probably should be in bed. But now we get to spiral about it together. Just kidding, kind of. Space in my podcast launch accelerator is intentionally limited because it helps keep these cohorts small, collaborative, and effective. You can learn more about my podcast launch accelerator at soundsgreatstrategy.com. There's a link right at the top of the page. As always, you can email me at courtney@soundsgreatstrategy.com. Thanks for talking the talk with me. Keep listening, keep experimenting, and I'll talk to you here again soon, or whenever inspiration strikes.